All right. Yeah, thanks a lot for the introduction. And hi again from my side. My name is, as was already said, Annika Wilde from Ruhr University Bochum. And I'm very excited to present to you our paper, The Forking Way When Ts Meet Consensus, which is a collaborative work with my colleagues, Tim Niklas Gruel, Ghassan Karame, and Claudio Soriente. So yeah, let's dive right in. One of the core technologies that we are dealing with in our paper are trusted execution environments, which on a high level provide a hardware-based isolation of runtime memory, thanks, inside so-called enclaves. And they have a couple of limitations. That is the issue. One of these limitations is that all input and output is controlled by the untrusted host. And also there are no freshness guarantees for any enclave inputs. That means that the enclave cannot validate whether the input it receives is the latest one or whether the untrusted host replayed some old input. And this opens the door for so-called forking attacks, where the adversary exploits this to create inconsistencies in the enclave state. And on the other hand, we have the blockchain technology, surprise, blockchain session. And it should be no surprise to anyone that they leverage consensus to achieve a total ordering of events. And what is important for us is that this consensus to work requires all involved data to be publicly available. And regarding smart contracts, this means that you cannot embed any secrets in a smart contract that you want to be publicly available in the end. And also you cannot include any randomness in the computation if it needs to be reproducible. And the good news is that these two technologies can complement each other, which is why the community came up with a marriage of these two T-based blockchains. And in this marriage, Ts contribute randomized and confidential computing, and the blockchains provide a total ordering of events, which can then be used to mitigate forking attacks. And when looking into several deployments of these T-based blockchains, we found that there are 4 different types of this marriage. The first type are T-based smart contracts, where the blockchain node just executes the smart contract inside the enclave to provide confidentiality. And then we have T-based consensus protocols, which use the T to speed up or scale the consensus. And then we also have T-based layer 2 solutions. For instance, some platforms leverage the T to provide confidential smart contracts for layer 1 blockchains that do not natively support them. And then last but not least, there are also T-based off-chain solutions that provide secure blockchain access through the T. For example, this could be crypto wallets or lightweight clients. And what we did was that we analyzed several T-based blockchains from all these 4 categories and had a look at how they try to prevent forking attacks, so rollback and cloning attacks. And we then also evaluated the limitations and pitfalls of all of these strategies. Maybe short disclaimer, there is no such thing like a one-size-fits-all forking mitigation that works for all these T-based blockchain solutions. So there are several considerations that we need to make, which I will talk about later. We then also showed how complex this problem is by uncovering previously unknown cloning vulnerabilities that lead to zero-day exploits in 3 production-ready networks. And last but not least, also played a little bit of the marriage counselor to leverage our previous analysis to fix these issues, or at least propose how these issues can be fixed. All right, regarding our methodology, as I already said, we analyzed platforms from these 4 categories that I previously talked about for how they prevent rollback and cloning attacks. So this is what our adversary can do. And we then evaluated them with respect to 3 core properties, namely functionality, robustness, and performance. And because this marriage seems to be very promising, there is a large pool of applications out there. So we analyzed 29 of these T-based blockchain applications for how they can cope with forking attacks. Across these platforms, we found 4 broad strategies of how forking attacks can be mitigated. The first one are stateless enclaves, where the enclave just does not persist state and is thus rollback resistant by design. Then another solution assigns ephemeral identities to the enclaves to make clones distinguishable. We also have a solution that involves defining a fixed set of clients that can be used to detect mismatches in the enclave state. And last but not least, lots of applications, of course, also leverage the serialization properties of the underlying blockchain, for example, to order state updates. Problem is that all of these solutions have a couple of limitations, be it in the expressiveness of the enclave application that can be executed, key management requirements, or how they can handle faults and blockchain forks. So let me go through this based on a small example, the example of Phala. Phala is a production-ready layer 1 blockchain with an active mainnet that leverages the TE to run confidential smart contracts. And for that, each node runs two components, a relayer and an enclave, and the relayer basically fetches the blocks from the blockchain and forwards them to the enclave, which then, sorry, that was too quick, parses the transactions out of the block and executes them to update the smart contract state. So the relayer is basically just a connection between the enclave and the outside world, and a small subset of nodes also runs an additional component to basically perform consensus and publish new blocks. And regarding forking mitigations, Phala leverages stateless enclaves and serialization techniques. So this means that the enclave does not store any smart contract state, but rather re-executes all transactions from the ledger to recover the enclave state upon restart. However, what we found is that this is insufficient to prevent cloning. Namely, we found a zero-day exploit based on cloning in Phala that allows the attacker to equivocate on the smart contract state as follows. So if we have two enclave clones in some state that is produced from the transactions on the ledger, then the malicious node can terminate one of the relayers to isolate the enclave so that it does not receive any new transactions anymore and thus cannot update its state. So when the client then queries the smart contract state from the enclave, it will respond with an outdated state without any indication for the client to detect this attack. But we can, of course, fix this issue, so let's have a look at how this could be done. In Phala, each smart contract is typically executed by a single enclave. So it is very essential that all enclaves are alive at all times, and to achieve this, Phala offers a heartbeat mechanism where enclaves regularly issue heartbeat transactions to prove that they are alive. And interestingly, these transactions include the current block height, so we can tweak this into a cloning mitigation as follows. So if enclaves exchanged heartbeats via a separate peer-to-peer network, they could verify that, one, they regularly receive these heartbeat messages from others, and two, that the included block height matches their last process block. Problem is the solution requires that the enclave is connected to at least one honest node to ensure that it receives all these heartbeat transactions, and also randomized smart contracts are not protected from cloning because an adversary could still execute the smart contract twice with the same input, receiving different outputs, and then choose the more favorable output. To solve the issue with the existential honesty, we suggest including the current block height in all responses from the enclave to the client, so that the client can then validate the freshness of the response. Problem, this still does not solve the issue with randomized computations because this can still be done. And this can only be solved by relying on ephemeral identities to ensure that only one enclave is running on each node at all times. So what I want to show here is just that finding the correct countermeasure or the correct combination of countermeasures requires a lot of considerations of what the blockchain provisions, what should be achieved with the application, and you need an individual solution. You cannot just take one countermeasure and use it for everything. We did this in-depth analysis for 28 more T-based blockchains, finding all sorts of combinations of the countermeasures, some of them working for the respective applications, some of them not, and most notable here are 3 zero-day exploits based on cloning that we identified in production-ready networks, namely Phala, which we just discussed, the secret network, and 10. So I just don't want to let you go with what I said before, so a very brief summary of what kind of forking mitigations exist and how we would suggest using them. Not persisting enclave state is the best rollback mitigation that exists, so we would suggest doing that whenever possible. Similarly, relying on ephemeral identities is the only solution to prevent the cloning of randomized executions. So in our view, these two are really the best couple that we can think of. However, not all applications make do without a state. So in that case, one can either rely on a fixed set of clients, only if the application logic allows to do that, or otherwise use the serialization capabilities of the underlying ledger to lock the enclave state and thereby protect against rollback. All right, that's all from my side. If you're interested in more details, then you can of course find them in our paper or just reach out to me directly. I'm also here at NDSS until Friday, so yeah, I'd be very happy to chat. And thanks a lot for your attention.
Thank you, speaker. We have time for 3 questions. No, I'm messing with you. 1 question, 2 questions? Okay, I have a couple of questions actually. So in your table, it seems that everything is glim, a little bit gloomy, in a sense that no such solution meets any of those expectations that you have. Can you comment? Yeah.
Yes. So we had a closer look at all of these limitations. At all of these countermeasures, and had a look at what are potential limitations of those. In most of these cases, the applications do something to deal with this limitation, so they are not subject to them. For example, in the case of blockchain forks, which is could be a problem in serialization techniques. So I mean, you can serialize your state on the ledger, but if you have a blockchain fork, you can still have contradicting transactions in each fork. But these solutions then typically use blockchains that do not allow for forks. So they do not use Nakamoto style, but rather use BFT consensus, for example. Okay. But it's still, if you use this mitigation strategy, then this is something that you need to consider.
Okay, cool. Any questions from the audience? Yes.
Just a clarification. So in your survey, have you thought about a uniform security framework, like a formal proof for combining blockchain with TEE? So in all of these works.
Sorry, I'm not sure I got your question.
Have you thought about using formal security mechanism to combine blockchain and TEE? Yes.
So you mean to formally verify that this combination is a good idea? Or
yeah.
Actually, we didn't think about any formal methods in this work. That's a very good suggestion. Thanks for the question.
All right, thank you.
Actually, in the same line of the question. So,
yes.
Sure. In some of the desirable properties that you mentioned, there is robustness, and this is like a very broad type of expectation or kind of requirement. Do you see any avenue where formal definition of robustness across different ingredients would make sense in this domain? Or just like a holistic system thing that you just base it on some primitive assumptions and just this is robust with real world adversaries and that's it.
Yeah. Yes.
Yes. It is a real world.
Yeah. Thanks for the suggestion. I think that of course, the formal verification would definitely make sense in this scenario.
Right. Awesome. So let's thank Anika very much, and you win the best paper award for the more questions. You have 3 questions.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah.